Fleming, the Executive Director of the Edmonds Senior Center. We're a 501c3 nonprofit living in a city building, and quite happily now in this building since 1968. We're about to celebrate our 45th anniversary. We're doing a kind of a celebration and fundraiser on Friday night, November 15th. Senator Maria Cantwell is going to be the keynote speaker, and there will be a number of other dignitaries. We'll have some really good music. It'll be a lot of fun event. We hope to raise a little money, but more particularly, we hope to really celebrate 45 years of service to this community. So you're all encouraged and invited. I would like to recognize a number of people connected with the center, although some of them are here in a different role in their board of directors role. But we have a number of people from our board. I saw Roger Hertrick, who's back here. Roger is on our board. Dave Page is on our board. Adrienne Fraley-Monillas is on our board. And I'm forgetting someone. Alma Otomo, who will get introduced in another way on our board. I think I'm still missing somebody.
Steve.
Steve Bernheim. There he is over there, Steve. And we also have some past board members. Evelyn Wellington, who's here, longtime member of ACE. So we're delighted to see you all here. My job is really to welcome you, so welcome to the center. We're delighted to have you here this evening. And we've done, this is I think the third or fourth now, candidates forum that we've done in conjunction with ACE and in the partnership with ACE, and we're delighted to have you again. So I give it over to John Reed, who is ACE's president. John.
On behalf of the Alliance of Citizens for Edmonds, I would like to also welcome you to the fourth City Candidate Forum that we have sponsored for each local election year since 2007. ACE was founded in 2004 as a 501c4 nonprofit by a group of citizens who were concerned that some proposed zoning changes in the downtown were inconsistent with the city's character and unique charm. ACE is not anti-development or against change. On the contrary, we support changes that consider the history and small town feel of Edmonds and that respect the open space, beauty, views, and other natural gifts that we are blessed to have. Our membership is open to all. If you're interested in learning more about ACE or in joining ACE, there's detailed information and some brochures out on the table where you came in the door. I want to introduce Alma Otomo, who will be our timekeeper tonight. All the questions will be allowed a 1.5 minute response time. And at 30 seconds, you'll get a warning. And at the end of your time, you'll hear a little beep, and she will hold up it's time to sit down. And if you still don't sit down, she has new noises for you. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Rich Senderoff, who will moderate our forum this evening. Rich is a biopharmaceutical scientist by training. He is an ACE member and has served on the City Economic Development Commission since it was founded in 2009. He has also served on the Community Backyard Habitat for Edmonds Steering Committee and on the board of the Save the Rose House campaign. Rich?
Thanks, John. And I guess I'll start by continuing with the welcoming. I'd like to welcome and thank our Edmonds City Council candidates and all of you for attending this forum. Our sole purpose in putting on this forum is to help provide you with the information you need to make an informed choice when you vote. We are blessed to live in such a picturesque setting within a community having diverse interests that shape our personal visions for Edmonds' future. I believe most of us are here tonight to see how our personal visions align with those that seek to represent our interests. As such, the questioning is intended to be both topically relevant to current council considerations and of great community interest. Now for the rules. After a 1.5 minute opening statement, each candidate will be asked 5 questions from the categories of strategic planning, economic development, incentive zoning, Harbor Square, and environment versus development balance. Candidates will have, as John mentioned, up to 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. Next, each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask a question of his or her opponent, who will have 1.5 minutes to respond. And finally, each candidate will be allowed a 1.5 minute closing statement. And just before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to please turn off cell phones as well as refrain from applause and audience interruptions during the question and answer period. But the candidates will be available to answer personal questions after that period ends. So I think that we can get started with opening statements. Ms. Fraley-Monillas, would you like to start?
Sure. First off, I'd like to thank ACE and the Senior Center and everybody who's came here tonight for coming, getting involved, and being an engaged community. I was born and raised in this area. I don't come from far away. I don't come from unfortunately, that to some that is an issue because I have lived here my whole life or within 3 miles of where I currently live. I choose to live here for a reason. I choose to live here because I love Edmonds. It's a great place. It's a great place to raise your children. It's a great place to retire. And I hope to see Edmonds very fruitful in the future and continue to be that great place for us all to live. First thing I'd like to do is clarify some positions that have been brought out on the internet about me. I have not received any money or endorsement from any of the locals that represent the employees of Edmonds. I am supported by many different unions because I believe in America and the men and women that make my country great. I am supported by 775 Northwest and the home health care workers. My friend Lori was able to work while her mother was dying of cancer in her house. Home health care workers provided that support so she could continue her work. I'm supported by the UFCW because I believe our grocery store workers deserve better than their family wage jobs being reduced further to part-time and unaffordable medical insurance. I'm supported by the Boeing Aerospace Machinists because I believe Boeing in Snohomish County makes the best airplanes in the world. They contribute to our economy by having family wage jobs, which in turn translates to money spent in Edmonds. I support Boeing. I've been endorsed by environmental groups such as the Sierra Club and the Cascade Bicycle Club because I believe in helping our world to be a better place for our children. I've been supported by many women's organizations because we have yet to finish that fight and hear that glass ceiling break. All of these allegations have taken away from the real issues of the city of Edmonds. In the past 4 years, our council has worked very hard to spend your tax dollars wisely. I took office 4 years ago after having most of the prior 4 years of tax increases, along with property tax revenue increases and sales tax revenue increases coming into Edmonds. We were warned of potential serious program cuts unless we changed course. We did, and now we have anywhere from $9 to $11 million in reserves and no need to bring a levy forward at this time. Don't let the people distract you from what's really issues as citizens of Edmonds. And I know you're all smart enough to see through it, so thank you.
We forgot to start the timer.
Okay.
I can what?
We're not going to cut you off.
Oh.
Forgot to start the timer on Adrienne.
I thought that was a little long.
Yeah. I cut
I was
off 2
wondering
words to be in the. Okay. Great. So, you ready for me? Okay, thank you. I too wish to thank the Senior Center and ACE for once again providing the opportunity for us to come before you and acquaint you more with our beliefs and background and what we see as the issues. Unlike Adrienne, I was not born in this area. I was born way on the east coast of Canada, but I ended up here in Edmonds because I chose to be here. I have lived in 98020 for the last 34 years now. A little over 10 years of that time here in Edmonds, a place we all love. And in doorbelling, that's one of the common things I hear from citizens. When I ask them if they have any problems, we just love living in Edmonds. Because I love this community, I was one of the community activists that successfully battled to keep King County's wastewater treatment plant, Brightwater, out of here, and that's now where we have, what most of you will know, where we have Point Edwards. I went on to become an Edmonds City Council member for 4 years. During my term, I twice was council president pro tem and served a couple years as chairman of the Finance Committee, and served on numerous other committees, many of which I still remain on as a citizen volunteer. I have been doorbelling since the middle of June. I like to say to people, I've actually been doorbelling in 3 seasons now, spring, summer, and fall. Citizens are telling me that they see too much conflict amongst city council members. President Obama's campaign theme was hope and change. I am your best hope for change in our city council. I have had considerable experience resolving conflict, being the father of 5 children, all of whom were teenagers at the same time. And also during my career as a senior vice president at Food Corporation in Everett. The mayor has recently presented a more optimistic budget for 2014 that restores some of the services that were cut this year. But 2014 expenses are budgeted to be quite a bit in excess of revenue. So we'll have to wait and see what City Council does with that budget, because they're going to have, obviously, the final say. My commitment has earned me exceptional local support, including the Affordable Housing Council of King and Snohomish County, because they trust my work ethic and my judgment. Please go to www.wambolt.org to see the full list. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll begin with the questioning now, and Mr. Wambolt, you'll be the first to respond to this first question. And the first question is going to be about strategic planning. In April of this year, the council adopted the Strategic Action Plan, which was based on broad community input. What 2 or 3 action plan items will you advocate for, and what steps will you take to ensure that the strategic plan becomes efficiently implemented? Are there any instances where your personal beliefs take precedent to public opinion, and what are they?
That last one's a hard one to answer, obviously, but one of the areas I will advocate, because it's a high priority, is the redevelopment of Harbor Square. Several thousand citizens participated in the development of the strategic plan, and they rate the redevelopment of that area a high priority. So that needs to be dealt with, not necessarily in what has been presented by the port, because, as they've always said, that's just a conceptual plan. That's the main one I'm going to be advocating for, and whether my thoughts are aligned with the majority of citizens, I'm not really certain. But I expect that they are. The most vocal ones has opposed what the port has presented, but that's not necessarily the best answer, what they have presented. I think there are other alternatives to the higher height. Simply, if you don't have higher buildings, that you can do away with some of the open public space to get the necessary square footage to make the project pencil out financially. I see she's. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Ready? Excuse me. Ready? Ms. Fraley-Monillas? And feel free to ask me if you want me to repeat the question.
Would you repeat it,
Sure.
Dr. Senderoff?
What 2 or 3 action plan items will you advocate for, and what steps will you take to ensure that the strategic plan becomes efficiently implemented? Are there any instances where your personal beliefs take precedent to public opinion, and what are they?
Well, first off, I voted for the strategic plan, and I voted for the funding for it. I felt that we needed to have a future in Edmonds. We all needed to talk about it, listen to each other, and see exactly what the citizens wanted in Edmonds. Some of the areas that most interest me, and it's probably won't surprise many people in this room, is the economic development of Highway 99 and the need for us to create an urban village sort of living situation up on Highway 99. We're missing it, and we'll talk about this a little bit further, but I think we're missing a big group of people that have the potential to live there, work there, shop there by us not moving forward with Highway 99. Another issue is parks. I think the strategic plan talked in depth about various parks and what the citizens really, really wanted to see in their parks. They want to see us maintain the parks. They want to see us improve the parks. The other issue, of course, is the senior center, near and dear to my heart. That's within the strategic plan. And I think having the senior center as a high priority to me tells me that the citizens of Edmonds cares. It isn't just the seniors that care, it's everybody connected with the city of Edmonds. So those are my three areas that I have probable most interest in, and I will continue to move forward with the strategic plan on the council level.
Okay. The next question is about economic development. And Ms. Fraley-Monillas, you'll be asked to start this one.
Sure.
Please provide 2 or 3 specific economic development steps that council has the direct authority to undertake, excluding increased residential development and raising building heights, that you would promote as a council member to generate additional revenue for the city.
Good question. Well, economic development, I think, is a lot more than just building heights. Economic development is creating a vibrant community, and I think Edmonds has a vibrant community. One of the areas that I've mentioned before that we have not developed much over the past 20 years has been Highway 99. Highway 99 brings in about 80% of our tax revenues into Edmonds from sales tax. All the other businesses combined bring in about 20%. The car dealerships are a major reason for it. But we do need to develop Highway 99. I think that us not doing anything, we're behind the game as far as Shoreline and as far as Linwood is concerned. Linwood's already moving ahead with their development. We've started to do some things on Highway 99. We've made some improvements, but we really need to move forward. That's one of my most important areas, I think, for economic development. As long as I don't get that cow, I'm good.
Okay, we set with the time? Mr. Wambolt, would you like me to?
No, that's not necessary, Rich. Well, of course, I have to agree with Councilmember Fraley-Monillas about Highway 99. There is tremendous opportunity there. That's why I've served on the Highway 99 Task Force for the last 8 years. We've done a lot of good work. We kind of went into a sabbatical the last year. It didn't have enough meetings. And it's also why when I was on city council, I voted to increase the heights on highway in the two CG zones on Highway 99 to 60 feet and 75 feet so that we could encourage more intense economic development there. And we had a great project underway at the corner of 220th and Highway 99. That was a $160 million project until the economy crashed. There's also areas adjacent to Highway 9, right behind the Safeway property. There's the Safeway Shopping Center. There's a property that we've been working on for some time, just needs a little tweaking of the code, and we can get development there. Additionally, there's Fraley Village, which I worked on with another council member when I was on city council to have that rezoned to make it more attractive to a developer because the owner of the property wants to sell it. In the last 4 years, they still have not been successful, so apparently the code is still too rigid, and we need to get, that's one of the first things I'd go to work on, actually, is Fraley Village, to find out precisely what needs to be done to get that property redeveloped. There are others, but you had the caveat of no height increases. And other changes. So. That sounded like my stomach.
Okay. The next question will be about incentive zoning. And incentive zoning is somewhat of a new concept coming to Edmonds, so for the benefit of the audience, I'd like to take a moment to describe it for you. Incentive zoning establishes baseline zoning requirements, but offers developers allowances such as height bonuses, parking flexibility, fee waivers or reductions, and permitting priority in exchange for public benefits such as affordable housing, open space and recreation, utility enhancements, historic preservation, and increased environmental protection. Do you consider incentives intended to provide a return in terms of public benefits for potential zoning accommodations a viable approach to bridge divides between future development and community values? If not, why? If so, well, we've been talking about Highway 99. You're going to talk about it some more. If so, how might you apply this to Highway 99, considering the unique attributes of this business district and surrounding neighborhood? Please distinguish between required benefits and optional benefits.
Wow, in a minute and a half. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I guess it's my turn, is it?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Wambolt.
Well, the planning board actually in June of 2011 came forward with a bunch of recommendations to city council that they needed to, changes that needed to be made in the BD zones in order to spur some development there. Because nothing has happened in the BD zones, that's all in the downtown area, actually since 2005. Nothing has been developed there. So there was a bunch of different recommendations that was made by the planning board. The council did eventually deal with some when they started to take them up in August of 2011. But the one to do with development agreement, which is a form of incentive zoning, was turned over to the city attorney to come back with some recommendation. Well, he didn't come back with any recommendation until February of this year. I think it's borderline criminal that this council and mayor allowed that city attorney to go a year and a half before coming back with any response, something he should have done in probably a month. So he came back with incentive agreements, which, and the development agreement is a form of incentive agreement. Yes, I absolutely do support incentive agreements, and the way the development agreement was recommended by the planning board is there had to be public benefits before you could ever get a development agreement. And these are not dangerous tools because they can only be granted after a couple of public hearings and also the city council has final say. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sinderoff. I think I got it.
Okay.
I think incentive zoning can be used in a very wise manner in many different ways. I have concern when the incentive zoning that was proposed to us had to do with the heights in the downtown core. That I don't see as good incentive zoning. Where I see beneficial incentive zoning for public benefit is up on Highway 99. When I talked a little bit ago about an urban development, one of the first things we have to do is get the zoning changed up there to allow for that urban sort of development. And what I'm picturing in an urban development is wide open spaces, housing, maybe condominiums, maybe apartments, maybe low-income housing in exchange for some height on Highway 99. I mean, there are a whole number of places that we can use incentive zoning. I can see some incentive zoning in a number of other areas of Edmonds to provide parks and places for people to join and be there. You know, we're built out by about 95% of Edmonds at this point, so we don't have a whole lot of room to go when it comes to incentive zoning and development. But I can see us using incentive zoning as a benefit to the citizens where it's appropriate and what it's appropriate for. For height in the downtown core, I don't agree with it. Thank you. I didn't do anything.
They're having fun. They're having fun.
We're ready. All right, ready with the timer. Okay, the next question will be about Harbor Square, and Ms. Fraley-Monillas, your turn to start.
Sure.
In 2006, and again last year, redevelopment proposals for the near waterfront properties, including Harbor Square, Salish Crossing, and the Vatika Indian Restaurant, have failed. Why do you believe these efforts have been unsuccessful? And what types of development would you advocate for in the Harbor Square area? Please address building heights, density in residential, and other potential uses.
Minute and a half, huh? Well, Harbor Square, as most of you know, was presented in a plan developed through the port. The port pulled their plan. One of the reasons why the port pulled their plan is that as our responsibility to change the comp plan, council started looking at various ways to change the port's plan, basically, is what it was. And the port was not comfortable with the proposed changes, so the port withdrew their plan. Now that leaves it back onto us. So where do we go in the future? I think this council has every interest in making the whole port area or the near waterfront area developed in a sensible development. Now what that means, I think it's up to the public to decide. I don't think it's up to me to make the determination what we should have on this property and where we should have it. I think one of the bigger problems we've had, and I've only got 30 seconds to do this in, is that I don't believe the port reached out to people with varying views very well. The port had a number of groups that worked with them to determine the 55 feet, to determine the sorts of benefits they were going to have, but they generally had people in their group that had like views to theirs, and that doesn't create a very good plan when you're dealing with the city. Now, when you're dealing with the small entity, it might be.
Oh, Mr. Wambolt?
Right. Well, obviously I anticipated this question. And I don't think nobody will ever redevelop Harbor Square if the project does not make financial sense. To make sense financially requires a certain amount of buildable square footage. That square footage can be attained by balancing the heights and the footprints of the buildings. City Council could not accept the increase in height from the currently allowed 35 feet to one building being at 55 feet, but the average was 45 feet. So the trade-off would have to be buildings with bigger footprints. Therefore, if the site is to be redeveloped in the city's strategic plan, which was produced with the input of several thousand citizens, rating redevelopment there as a high priority, as I mentioned earlier, then the amount of public open space will have to be reduced from what was provided in the port's conceptual plan. Less open space would not be a disaster, since massive amount of open space is now needed to provide surface parking. I believe it needs to be, the area that ends up there needs to be transit-oriented development. We need a more dense population, and we need fewer cars on the road. We have to increase the population of Edmonds 5,000 people by the year 2025. The Growth Management Act says that. We have to do it. The population of Edmonds the last few years has actually been shrinking. It's below 40,000 now, so we have. Thank you.
Okay, and the next and our last question before you ask each other a question will be an environment versus development balance question. Edmonds is blessed with valuable open spaces, including beaches, an intertidal marsh wildlife sanctuary, streams and other natural areas, as well as views, especially in our downtown Bowl area. This is offset by the need for economic development that supports a sustainable economy and funds city services. Factors associated with pedestrians, cars, trains and ferry traffic, safety, and tourism also come into play. Describe what you believe is the proper balance between these two competing priorities and why. Mr. Wambolt?
Wow. What a question.
Minute and a half.
what is the right balance between the two? Well, the fortunate thing is right now in the city council, we have an ample number of people, council members that are concerned about the environment. I don't think it's, I won't say I'm not concerned about the environment, because I am. I've been recycling and doing all those sort of rudimentary things for at least 20 years, and I'm not a litter bug or any of those sorts of things. But I don't classify myself as an extreme environmentalist. I have other passions. My passion is more the finances of the city. Our city council does have council members with financial ability, but I don't think there are a sufficient number there. And that's my focus would be on increasing the finances of the city. And I'll let a few other members on there make sure we keep that in balance by them continuing to be heavily focused on environmental issues. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
The balance in our environment is a very important balance. As most of you know, living on the shores of Puget Sound as I have my whole life, I understand more than most about the importance of maintaining our critical areas, our buffers, our marshes, our waters. I'm concerned about the coal trains. I have great concerns about the coal trains. One time a coal train slips up and down our waterfront, and what's going to happen to our salmon habitat? These are all questions. I'm not an environmental, considered an extremist in environmental sciences, certainly, but I do have some good common sense that tells me that we have to look to the future for our children. I grew up here. I grew up before most of the buildings that were here, before Harbor Square was there. I grew up here. I've seen the difference in that marsh. When I was a small child, that marsh was 2 or 3 times the size it is, at least twice the size as it is today. And now we look at where our marsh is. If we're willing to put up cement and buildings everywhere in the city and get rid of our environment, I don't think that's an answer. I think that's a negative to us. I think we have to look for our children, for our future, and ignoring it and putting our head in the sand is not the answer for this city, nor is it the answer for the city council. I consider myself very lucky. I serve with a number of people that care very much for our environment, Mr. Peterson being one of them.
Okay, and now you'll each have a chance to ask each other a question. We ask that you don't take more than 30 seconds to ask the question, so I'm allowed apparently more than 30 seconds, but you're not. And then you'll be allowed again a minute and a half to respond. Ms. Fraley-Monillas?
Sure. Mr. Wambolt, I really have only one question, and it's something that's been, I suppose, bothering me for a while. And that is, before you ran for council the first time, you were a member of ACE, and you were opposed to the heights increase in the downtown. You ran on no heights increase in the downtown. You got on city council, and you became, I think as you put it, educated to the heights issue. And now you have no problem with going to 55 feet in some areas in the downtown core. What's going to happen if perhaps you might win this election? What's going to happen on 5th Avenue and 9th Avenue and 12th Avenue? I mean, where does it stop? Where does the heights issue stop?
The height issue stops. I have never advocated for any buildings anywhere near 55 feet in that the areas you spoke about. In my first term on council, when I said I voted for the taller buildings on Highway 99, there was also a move to raise the height limit in the core downtown from 30 feet to 33 feet. It's only 3 feet. But I strongly oppose, and I still oppose today, and if I was back on city council, I absolutely would oppose that 3 feet, because it's an area of buildings that are only 1 and 2 story. 3 more feet would allow 3-story buildings. That would change the character of that whole area. There's no 3-story buildings there. The only heights increases that I favor in the core downtown is by a development agreement. That's up to 5 feet more for certain uses, and there's a very small number of uses that would be eligible. Hotel, post office, artist studios, and a public market. So me supporting 55 feet in the downtown core, absolutely not. And the 55 feet, by the way, that was proposed is not in the downtown. Yeah, I think it's instructive to notice that the council was always talking about the harbor stores being on the waterfront. Sorry. Now they say it's on the near waterfront.
Okay, and now, Mr. Wambolt, your question for Ms. Fraley?
Yeah, I have been, as I said earlier, I and a few others have been doorbelling since the middle of June. By the end of this week, we will have visited every accessible home in the city of Edmonds. When I say accessible, you cannot get in condominium buildings. All the others, we will have visited by the end of this week. I personally already have visited over 5,100 homes. Oftentimes, citizens have asked us the name of the opponent. When we tell them Adrienne Fraley-Monillas, they frequently respond that they have not heard of you. And often, when they have heard of you, they ask, what has she accomplished while in city council? So my question, Ms. Fraley-Monillas, is would you tell us what, if any, piece of legislation that you have fostered from a beginning through to a successful conclusion?
I believe that probably the strongest thing I fostered is a sense of consensus amongst the council. We tend to have our problems on occasion and disagreements, and that's a natural approach. Always, in groups of 7 people that were put together not by choice, kind of like a family. Some families at least. But I honestly believe that I have done my best job to keep the tax dollars down for the citizens, to spend the money wisely for the citizens, to look at where the needs are to the citizens and listen to the citizens. Creating legislation for the city is not the sign necessarily of a good counselor. Listening to the people that are out there is the sign of being a good counselor, and that's what I do. I go out there and listen. I just don't listen to people in the downtown. I don't live in the downtown. Mr. Wambolt, in that area that he's talking about, that he wouldn't increase the heights 3 feet, that's his house. That's his apartment. I live in the outer part of Edmonds. So I talk to people in the store, in the grocery stores, at Costco, on Highway 99, at Westgate, in Perrinville. That's where I talk to people, and I get to know what people in this city want from the city. It isn't about council. It's about the 40,000 people that live in this city.
Okay, then. That wraps up our first question and answer period. How about a round of applause for our candidate? Oh, no, wait.
Yeah.
I jumped the gun. We have closing statements. So we do have closing statements, 1.5 minutes. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Rich.
Mr. Wambolt, you'll start.
First of all, the zones I was talking about not increasing the heights is not where I live. I do not live in a mixed-use area. I live in a multi-family area. And by the way, if I am successful in getting elected, I will be the only member of the city council that actually lives in the downtown. And as I just said earlier, we've been through all this whole city. I haven't been in one place where Councilmember Fraley-Monillas has visited. Not one single place. I don't ask them, generally. Sometimes I do, but citizens volunteer that information. And I don't think anybody walks around all this city more than me and my wife have until this doorbelling, when I'm doing 5 or 6 miles virtually every day except the weekends. I don't do weekends. Because 99% of my supporters live in Snohomish County, they really know me and have great confidence in what I'll continue to accomplish for our city. Only 38% of Ms. Fraley-Monillas' contributions are from Snohomish County. Most of her supporters are outsiders who do not really know her. They support her for her lifelong commitment and direct involvement in different organizations. It is time to get back on track. The voters of Edmonds have a decision to make. If you want a council member who will continue to be responsive to outside interests, vote for Ms. Fraley-Monillas. But if you want a council member having extensive financial experience.
Well, I'll just pick up where he left off. Mr. Wambolt, if you take a look at his treasury, he's accepted most of his monies came from special interests. Special interests who would gain money from Harbor Square's development. Go to the Public Disclosure Commission and look. You will see. I've been endorsed by people that really do know me, Mr. Wambolt. I've been endorsed by people like Governor Jay Inslee, Senator Maria Cantwell, Representative Jim McDermott. Now, Mr. Wambolt will make claims that they all belong to a particular political party. Well, his elected endorsers do too. Don't let him fool you here today. All of the mayors that he say endorse him belong to a particular political party. You all need to understand that. This is smoke and mirrors, and I'm not willing to put up with it any further. People endorse me, that know the work I've done in the public sector for 35 years. It hasn't been a self-serving sort of 33 years. I have given and given and given of myself, and I want to continue to give and give to the citizens of Edmonds. So I encourage you all to vote for me. Vote for Adrienne Fraley-Monillas, and please go to adriennemonillas.com. Call me. I'm more than happy to discuss anything that Mr. Wambolt's brought up. Thank you.
Well, it was my mistake, so you get a second round of applause.
Last one.
That's fine. Yeah.
And next we'll hear from